Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining me for Coffee with Katie. I have water today, not coffee. It's still warm here. We're going to be in the 90s today, so it seemed a little too hot for coffee this time of day. But I'm glad you're here. We have some very special guests today. I'll just briefly introduce them and then we'll get into our topic. It's going to be very conversational. I'm going to ask them some questions, ask them to respond. I hope you'll ask questions as well. You can feel free to put those in the chat, or you can ask them, unmute yourself and ask them verbally. That's great too. But we're happy to have Dave McAdams here from
Cultivate Community.
Cultivate. I want to keep Cultivate Community. I keep wanting to say Cooperate Community. Cultivate Community Co-op. Dave is the vice president there and does some videography work and was just telling us about his work in public access TV before you all joined us. And then we have Cheryl here. Cheryl has a company, a nonprofit consulting company. Her and Dave have worked together. Those two, the co-op and her company have worked together to create a grant binder. And when I learned about this from Paula, who is also with Cultivate, I thought to myself, wow, this is something other co-ops would really be interested in and really find value in. And so I reached out to Cheryl. Paula introduced us and she graciously agreed to be here today. So thank you very much, Cheryl. Thank you, Dave, for being here. And we'll get started just by you two telling us a little bit more about yourselves and what you'd like us to know about the work that you do. Probably Dave, you with the co-op, and Cheryl, you with your company. So I'll go ahead and let Cheryl get started.
Okay, awesome. So I am Cheryl Smith, CEO for Doula Nonprofit Services and the Community Heroes Program. We support nonprofits anywhere in the country with grant writing, training, and consultation. Our chief aim is just to make sure that the nonprofit community, particularly the very small micro organizations, have an opportunity to get positioned for sustainability and growth. So we focus on their compliance and what it is that they're doing to generate those dollars that keeps them running every single day. So I support lots of organizations. In any given month, I am probably training and meeting up to actually some months over 3,000 new nonprofits I'm the small business trainer, business week trainer for the SBA and SCORE, and I support SCORE chapters across the country. So I spend a lot of my time making connections with organizations that really do need to have the resources and support. My company started in 2017, but I've been in the nonprofit arena for over 25 years. And let's see, there's a lot. That's what I want to share right now. And I'll let Dave speak, and hopefully we'll get back and we'll talk more about some of the things that I do.
Well, thank you, Cheryl, very much. I appreciate that. My name's David McAdams. I am the vice president of Cultivate Community Food Co-op. The co-op has been incorporated since 2017. We have 560 owners. I'm starting my second term of a 2-year term on the board of directors. We have, every co-op knows that we have our challenges and successes on a day-to-day and monthly basis. And so we are working hard and to find that community outreach, make connections with our local government officials, other organizations, vendors, and farmers. So we're doing all the things that everybody's supposed to be able to be doing, according with our plan to build out the interest for a food co-op. I found out about Cheryl because not only was I looking for Cultivate Community Food Co-op, but I was also looking for my nonprofit for television. I was like, who can I find that can help us with building, understanding grants better, and not maybe writing the grants, but the ins and outs of grants, of how to find them, what's mission aligned, and things like that. And I was working with the Small Business Administration trying to find information there in SCORE. And I came across one of her videos, and this dynamic individual sitting there going, you can do this. This is the possibility. This is where you have to look at. And so when we reached out and talked with Cheryl, she was like, yeah, we work with nonprofits. And he said, well, we're really not a nonprofit. We're for profit. But she goes, you know what? Your mission is very important. And while it is a for profit, you still have those nonprofit vibes, and you still want to help the community, and I can help you with this stuff. And so that's where, I mean, I've listened to many, and like she said, she's part of SCORE, and I've listened to her from all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. I've followed her on videos. So I appreciate Cheryl being here today. I appreciate Katie holding this, and hopefully that we can depart some good information for you to be able to find those grants, because I have a feeling that's where it's going, where grants are going to be a very strong part of your financial requirements for getting your food co-op going.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Cheryl. That's a great point. And the conference was mentioned earlier, the up and coming conference, which was held in September, seems like just yesterday, but was probably more than a month ago now. And I did a session there on innovative ways co-ops are funding now. And I compared the capital stack of a co-op from 10 years ago to a capital stack today. And 10 years ago, we were focused on a lot of owner equity, loans and shares, investments in the co-op. And that is transitioning much more towards grants, and co-ops that are opening and funding themselves fully are utilizing grants more than we have seen in the decade I have been in this industry. So it's quite a relevant topic. And Dave, you kind of touched on how you and Cheryl became acquainted, and you found out about her. But tell us about the working process after that. When you reached out to Cheryl, what was that like? What happened?
We reached out to Cheryl. We found her website. We signed up for her to do a consultation. We got our emails back and forth saying, this is what you can expect. This is what I'm willing to do for you. And then let's set up an appointment. And we did. We had a 30-minute appointment. We discussed with her what our vision and what we were trying to achieve in our little small section of California. And she was like, I've never worked with food co-ops before. This is something different. Your mission is totally, it aligns, but it's something I've never seen before. And we're like, oh, well, maybe we've stepped into the wrong place. And she goes, no, she goes, I can see what's going on. And let's talk about that. Let's see what, and then she's right down the list. We were talking, they're like, I need this, and this information right here. If you provide me this and let me get back with you, and I'll see what I can do for you. And then she goes, yep, let's do it. And then she laid out the contract. She said, this is what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to do this at this point in time. I'm going to do this at this point in time. And at the very end, I'm going to give you, this is your final package. And I was like, okay, let's make it happen. And I am right now. I matter of fact, what was great about this, Cheryl, we still are gobsmacked by about the passion you had with this.
Yeah.
From the standpoint is that you actually delivered more than what you said you were going to deliver, and a guidebook to be able to not only just to say, hey, you just didn't drop a package on our desk. You said, here's the package, and this is how to use it, and this is how to find grants, and then. Of course, like you said, you also have the videos out there. Anybody can search, anybody can sign up for SCORE videos. I would highly stress looking at the Small Business Administration and SCORE for any videos to help you align with your business, because that's what they do. But you can watch her and spot on every time. This is how down the path of how you would not only write the grants, but how do you search for grants? How do you find that if your mission aligned with grants before you even waste your time? And I think that's one of the biggest stressors for anybody that's writing grants, is that you may already have the verbiage that you're supposed to have. And then you already know that what your mission is, and you know what you're trying to solve for, not what you're asking for. You're not asking for a printer. You're asking for a printer to solve an issue, so you know what your issue is. The question is now, how do you go into those databases? How do you research to say, okay, that grant aligns with our mission. They are going to be willing to provide us a grant, and also at the same time knowing that what your budget is, because that's very important as well, because they're not going to hand you $1 million. They may hand you, a very small one, but you do, you do 5 or 6 grants, and all of a sudden you've got your goal. So this is one of the things that we've learned by working with Cheryl and her process and what we were talking about. I think that, I don't know if I've uh, any clearer, but that's about it.
I'm done here.
Sorry, I took all your thunder.
You've done an amazing job. Thank you so much for sharing. I Katie, I wasn't 100% sure of our process today, so I do have a very short presentation if it's helpful to be
Yeah.
able to show and kind of guide through the process, really repeating what Dave just said. I just have a visual for it. If you'd like me to share, I'm happy to.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's do that.
let's do that. Just trainer by nature. I usually can pull a PowerPoint out in a hot second. So give me a sec. And we won't we won't go through all of it. I just want to kind of highlight some of the and things that Dave just shared. And let's just go ahead and I can't actually see the big black bars in my way. Okay, so I'm going to go through and I promise it's short and painless, but I'm thinking since you are recording, this might be helpful for the folks that are on our workshop or our lunch and learn today, but as well as, other folks that may join later on and miss part of it. So this is my background. I tend to leave my first screen in so that you know that you were in good hands. I use my brain so much that my outlet lately is making soap and spending time with my little leader. So I've got a little grandbaby, spending time with him. And so let's just go through. I'm going to skip through and get right into the nitty gritty and just kind of reiterating what Dave said. Our process for supporting clients, and it doesn't matter who you are. If you've got a heart for charity and for people in your community, then that's something I'm interested in. And so I didn't know about Food Co-op. And so I spent our first meeting, maybe even the first 2 meetings, just getting to know Dave and Paula and what they do, understanding their pain points, how does the co-ops work? How does it rely on its members? What does it do in terms of impact, right? Looking at the challenges and those real pain points that you have to consider if you want to start a co-op. And this is something that you all, if you're on our workshop today, you already know about these things. I can go through these slides pretty quickly. Looking at the money, because I think of grants like Shark Tank, where, they'll test out the cookies, play the basketball, but when it comes down to the numbers, if things don't align, you don't get funded. So looking at what does it really cost to put this together. And then once I have, it's one of those Stephen Covey quotes, seek first to understand, then be understood. So once I had a clear understanding, my turn to share about the process and how it works. So I go into what is a grant? What can you expect? From a grant? It's a sum of money. You don't need your credit. It's a social credit type situation. And then we go into the players. Who's out there that's given money? So we talk about the differences between government versus private foundation versus corporate sponsorship, because these are all of the funders that we need to tackle and we need to pursue and, to get funding from. Then we go into the process itself. And so one of the things that I've learned I've been in the nonprofit arena for over 25 years. I've been writing grants for over 15 years. And then my company started in 2017. And I can tell you with certainty, when we think about the process, brainstorm your idea, figure out what you want to do, develop a clear proposal, get your budget in order, and then submit to funders. Well, that seems simple enough, but not quite, because the biggest illusion is the thought that people actually understand what you're saying. And if we can't actually get it from our brains to paper in a way that funders can consume it, then we really haven't communicated at all. So I love this quote: the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's taken place. And so then we go into the proposal itself. And so these are some of the pieces to any standard proposal. Like if you're going to create one for yourselves, and there's no reason you can't. So if you're going to create one for yourselves, then you've got to know that these are your main sections, your executive summary, which is written last, much like a business executive summary, your organizational history. Who are you? What are you about? What do you stand for? Your statement of need. Why does the community even need you? Not what it is you need from the community, but why are you established? What are you aiming to fill? What gap are you filling in your community? Your goals, they're always SMART goals, folks, always SMART goals. Your methodology, which is your program description, putting together your approach to funding. Like, how are you going to actually implement your program so that funders understand what they're funding? Who is your target population? See, some of these things, they just look like words on a piece of paper, but I assure you that funders are looking at every one of these sections and they're trying to make a good funding decision. And if you can't articulate these sections, then it's going to be hard to get the funding in the first place. With Dave and Paula and anyone else that I support, in addition to these sections, then we create common grant applications. And what that is about 15 pages of questions and answers, like a grant writer would respond for you, so that when you are pursuing funding on your own, you don't have to worry about being a think tank. It's already been done. So once we have a proposal, we take all those truths and then we put them in Q&A format across a series of questions that you might be asked. And then we develop letters and partnerships and different things that you're going to be documents that you're going to need when you actually get out and start the pursuit of funding. For Cultivate Community Food Co-op, it culminated for them in a terrific binder. I was so proud of the way it all came together. So it culminated in this binder. And just to give you an indication of the binder sections. And so they had the first section. I'm not sure if I don't know if you guys can see this. I'm sorry, it's a little small, but you've got all of the different pieces of the proposal. That second section, this is where you look at all of the pieces that you're actually going to use to pursue funding. And then there's the section on how do we do it. So I'm not going to always be in front of you. So there's a tutorial that's even in writing, outside of video, outside of me, where you can literally just go to your binder and say, okay, I want to apply for funding. I'm thinking about how to amend my budget. How do I do that? Well, that's all put together. And then there's a funding list. And these are funders who have demonstrated that they do provide funding for what it is that you do. And for Dave and Paula, this is their appendix section and some of the letters that we did create. So I listened in our very first meetings to what was important. Paula said, Cheryl, we've got to be able to show that we are diverse and we've got a diversity and inclusion policy. So I created it. We need to be able to go after those corporate sponsorships. So I created the sponsorship request. We need partnerships. Partners are critical to our success in our community. So we created that letter. We may need to go after owners so that we can get them on board to help us get more members. So we create that invite. Then we need to figure out, can owners help us by, through loans? I think they can. So then we create those documents. So when I'm working with a client, such as the Cultivate Community Food Co-op, we really look at what do they need? Not just what's a cookie cutter, something that I always give, but what's going to be most useful to your organization so that you're able to move forward. And so that's what that binder turned out to be. And it was wonderful. And then we looked at, okay, well, how do we find grants? How do we do that outside of, just, what we think we know is normal? Well, joining those associations, attending webinars and workshops, not just for me, I'm only one trainer across the country, but attending more of them, signing up for those grant alerts. These are the kind of things that matter. Then going to the databases, and there are free databases like the government sites. There is my bullet there for grantmakers.io, absolutely free. But then you've got other paid databases that you can go to find some of these opportunities. And so here's the thing. If you are a food co-op and you are not a nonprofit, I hope all is not lost. You can go to a lot of these databases and in your keywords, simply search for small business or for profit or fiscal sponsor or co-op, because when you use your keywords like that, now you're going to be able to retrieve opportunities where you don't have to be a 501c3 necessarily to find these opportunities in these databases. So it can be done. They are housing more grant opportunities than just for the nonprofit community. And so we talk about in our conversations when I'm meeting with Dave or anybody else that I'm working with, we're talking about where do you find, where's your best opportunity for funding? And then how do you align with those funders' priorities? How do you get yourself mission aligned and get those objectives aligned? And how do you tell your story? And so we talk about how you submit. I go live and show them exactly how you're going to submit for applications so that you have the best opportunity for success. And getting familiar with the funders platform is very important. Being thorough, not missing opportunities to respond to questions is also very important. And then we literally talk about the thing that no one wants to ever talk about, but it's the big elephant in the room: denials. You're going to get more no's than yeses. And I remember telling Dave and Paula this all the time, and they're like, okay, we don't want to hear that. But you get more no's than yeses. So what do you do about that? And so we talk about why our funding proposals declined most often because you're not mission aligned, right? You've not followed the guidelines, or maybe you didn't articulate, which is where I guess grant writers come in, that column number 2, making sure you've got a solid proposal in the first place. But then we talked about you could do all of the right things, and there's still funders out there who they're inundated. They deplete their funds and they won't necessarily tell you that. So sometimes it's nothing that you've done wrong. You've done everything right. It's kind of them, not you situation. So we talked about that. And then what success really means. Success means if you get 1 in 20, you're a rock star, because this is hard work. There's over 6,000 new nonprofits being registered and by our IRS every single month, you all, every single month. So your competition is fierce. So just making sure you understand like the process and what you do to recirculate that proposal and to never, ever, ever give up. And then within your organization, I don't care if you're a nonprofit or for profit, a best practice, create a culture for this, because you're going to need to sustain yourself. So making sure you're not operating in a silo, get your team involved, I call them a grant SWOT. You know, you've heard of the SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats. Do one specifically for grant writing. Where are you strong? Where are you weak? What are your opportunities? What's out there for you? And then making sure you get yourself grant ready. And those are some of the things that we talk about in our conversation. Develop the boilerplates like we did for Dave. You can do this for yourself. You don't necessarily need a writer for that. Integrate grant seeking into your own strategic plan. Pursue grants regularly. Publicly celebrate your wins so people know that you've done this. You can leverage those wins for more wins. And then just to wrap up super quick, I told you this be like 5 minutes. I'm from Michigan. We talk fast there. And so just to wrap up, I like to think of grants in the process like this. I love Eric War, who said, being rich is hard. Being poor is hard. Choose your hard. And so I get that applying for grants it's hard, but not applying for other people's money. And this is what their aim is to do to help you. That's harder. Not being able to have the resources in your organization to thrive and sustain, that's harder. So choose your hard. So I love that quote there. And I just know you can do it. So anyway, that was my quick, let's come out of here now. That was my quick spill on our process. And I'm hoping that's helpful for some of the folks that's in our audience today.
Oh yeah, that is great, Cheryl. So much,
Yeah.
so much good information in there.
Thank you.
Dave, tell us a little bit about the relationship and the process with the board. You know, because we all come from organizations with boards, and sometimes, you know, getting a board to agree on a path forward, hiring someone like Cheryl can be, you know, something we have to work on, or a challenge we have to overcome. How was that at your co-op?
And you're absolutely correct. You know, we went through the board process. We're asked first. We have to ask the question: what is our capacity? What is our capabilities? What do we have in our own ownership that can actually fulfill this mission, this requirement that we deem that we need to have? And so we would go through the ownership. We would go, who loves to write grants? you hear crickets. So those kind of
Usually,
things.
right?
Right. So the thing is, then you have to ask who's the professional organizations that are an owner that that have do things like fundraising or grant writing to see if those individuals have the time or capacity to do that. And then I did my research from the standpoint that, like I said, I was doing my SBC or the Small Business Administration and SCORE, going through that process and looking for training classes and videos to understand small business and how made that help us. And when I came across Cheryl's video, I was like, wow, okay, so the grant horizon was, or the plane that I was working on became more clear. There was less fog about understanding about grants. And so then I had to watch a couple of more videos, and then I said, okay, let's present for working with Cheryl. And this could go for anybody that you deem in your location or wherever you're at or whomever you are. Do your research, find out, look at their website, find out what their success rate is, find out, like I said, and then if they offer a free consultation, take it. Always sit down and take it and understand, because what they're going to do, that individual is going to do, is they're going to say, okay, so you've come to me, you've asked me to help you, and yet you don't even understand your own mission. So therefore, you need to go back and understand that before you even come and ask for help. So make sure you do your research. And then once you've done your research, once you've decided that that's what you're going to do, then you have to decide, okay, how much is this individual going to cost me? And then what is my return on investment? Do you find that it's going to be helpful when the final product comes through? And it's always a risk. Everything, it doesn't matter who you work with. This could have came out sideways for us. We could have said, we have no confidence in this package. And we would have said, we've just, taken our investment in this process and it's gone. So that's always a risk. So to always realize that whomever you work with, make sure that the contract is good, that the vision from them to you is clear, what the deliverables are, and let them know that you expect them to, your expectations and limitations. Make sure that you apply that in your conversation to whomever you work with. And it could also be, like I said, it could be one of your owners. Don't just go, well, they're a nice person. No. It's a business. This is a business. At the end of the day, we're a business, and we've got to make money to keep the co-op open or to make progress. So that was where, with the board, once we've done that, we made the call. We said we made a vote on it. We got it in our minutes, and we spent the money.
Okay. And speaking of the money, are you comfortable sharing with us what you spent to have that package created?
I think it was about $1,900. About something around in that round. I can't really remember. I don't have the books in front of me right now.
Gotcha. But in that ballpark.
In that ballpark. And the thing was, and of course the contract basically, Cheryl said, look, I'm going to need, if you're going to be committed to this, then I need to understand that you're committed to this. So I've got payment schedules. I'm going to expect something up front, and then expect something at the middle as we're going along. And then at the end, before I have the deliverables, I get but you have to be happy with the product. And that was one of the things that she was very on her end. And I think on every individual who you do business with, is that you have an agreement that did you get what you asked for? Did I perform? And if not, send it back. And then understand the contract before you even walk into it. That's the biggest thing. If both agencies go in with understanding the contract, understanding what the deliverables are, and you have done your due diligence providing the information to them, then if they're the organization that you feel that's going to provide you the deliverables, they should come through with that and don't expect anything less.
Anything you want to add to that, Cheryl?
I love how Dave is just really articulating our process together. And I think out of this, it really is it's a partnership. It's just not one-sided. It's not just what I need from it or what he needs from it. It was more about, the partnership wasn't about our individual needs. It was about the community need. What can the two of us, what can we do as a unit what can we do to bring out a product that's going to serve the community? So it was really just about and I go back to being a charitable program, even though they are not a nonprofit, this is still a program that enhances social good within the community. So, that really is, I think when you think about storytelling, there's always the antagonist, the protagonist, and then the hero. Well, the antagonist obviously is we don't have enough, locally sourced food where, our communities can thrive. And then the protagonist is the organization, but the hero is never the grant writer and it's never the organization. It is the program itself that's delivering something sustainable and beneficial to the community. And so we enter into a relationship. It's a partnership to bring about a product that's going to change the community. And I think that was the whole focus the whole time. There was never ego. It was always just, what do we need to do? What information do we need to collect? And I love to be able to work with Dave and Paula because they were always right on cue with giving me information that I could use to help the project. So if I asked for a photo, or if I asked for, a board list or a partner list, and they were so forthcoming and so easy to work with, because at the end of the day, it really is about bringing their program to life. So, gosh, I'm in total agreement with everything that he said. And that was just my extra 2 cents, is it really does become a partnership. And I am one of thousands of professionals across the country. I even train grant writers. And one of the things that I always say is we really have to make sure that our needs are not even mentioned. They're secondary. We have an agreement in place. Now let's get about the business of doing the work, because it's the work that's going to change our communities, not the egos and not who we think we are, and they were so easy to work with. I also want to mention this other point. Sometimes it's helpful to have an outside person. So even if this is a volunteer in your organization, or, somebody that you've probably helped in your community, to come in and lay eyes on your proposal, if you put it together, even if somebody else does. And here's why. When you are so closely connected to what it is you're doing, that can be your blind spot, right? You might not understand that what you think you're communicating, what you think that you're doing, you think maybe you've communicated it very well, but if you don't have another set of eyes on that work, then it's really easy to miss those areas and have gaps in your communication that will prevent you from getting funded. So I just, I don't know, this was a great experience for me as well, Dave. I appreciate you so much. And, that's my 2 cents there.
That's such a good point, is to have someone else outside the organization look, because it's
Always.
a whole nother view.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting. The first meeting that we had with Cheryl, she was like, "Are you guys really sure you want to go that direction with shouldn't you be this way?" Or and the thing is that because it was an educational process, know what your mission is, know what your business model is, be able to explain the cooperative model from what we're doing, because she did have some valid points, and it has been brought up before to our board about, why are we a for-profit? Why aren't we a nonprofit? Why? So the thing is that you need to understand, your business model and how to be able to explain that to the individual that you're trying to hire, because it is, if you can find that they can understand your cooperative model, then, and that's what she did. She wasn't like, "No, you guys are totally wrong. This is the way we have to do it." She was willing to listen. And if you're able to articulate that, then she was able to take that and go, "I understand now what you're trying to achieve. Now let me go in and make this happen." So be able to articulate what we're doing right now, because a lot of people are following, the 4 and 3 model, from
FCI.
FCI. Be able to explain that, be able to explain, understand, and understand. Yes, we understand that we should maybe we should have been a nonprofit, but those kind of things. Just be able to explain those kind of things. But and if that person is willing to listen, then that they have the same cooperative spirit that you have, and then you are now mission aligned. And I think that's very important too when you're hiring somebody, is make sure that they understand that you're mission aligned together and for the same, like she was saying, the same common goal, for the food co-op and for the community.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I have one more question for you, and then we're going to open it up for other questions. Dave, tell us how you've put this beautiful binder that Cheryl's created for you to use. How have you used it in the co-op?
So right now, the first grant out of the box was the HFFI grant. It really helped us take the information that they were looking for and be able. Because the way the grant proposal binder is written is that it basically answers many of the questions that are usually when you have a one of those pre-filled out the block type grants where they say submit this and answer this question. I mean, even though the grant proposal binder was written in a certain way to answer it, what it does is that it leaves it free to be able to modify it. And it's like writing a resume for yourself. You know what your strengths are, and then you have to look at what they're actually doing. Can you align your strengths to what they're asking the question? So once you've done that and you realize that, hey, I can answer their question. Here's my starting point. Now let's massage it to make sure it fits their vision of what they're wanting to support. So that's how we were working. That's basically our first grant out of the box.
Gotcha.
The biggest thing is then I think what we struggle on. It's not that we can't do grant. Like I said, grant writing. I said in submitting a grant or going into those pre-filled out blocks. Those once you open one up, it's like, what's your goals? The thing is that you can throw anything in there at all time. It's the research. And I think that's what the binder does, is that it says how it gives you a section in there. And one of the document that she showed us is that, how to apply for grants, I think is the big one. It's like, how do you do your searches and things like that? And that's where we have access to databases are expensive. Doing with grants, databases are expensive from the standpoint that we couldn't afford to actually provide a membership for it. But our fiscal sponsors and our other nonprofits in the area that we align with, they have access to these databases for doing research. And I think that our weaknesses, and that's what when we do the SWOT, our weaknesses in the research is being to the deep dive, because maybe if I was 35 years old, I would be able to sit there and for a couple hours to look through these databases. But at over 60 now, when I look at a database within 5 minutes, I'm totally wiped out. I'm exhausted just on the verbiage that has to go on. So really, we've got to find somebody ourselves that enjoys that research, and the processes of going through, looking at what the fiscal spot or what the organization, who they funded before, how they funded, at what level that they funded, those kind of things, knowing what to expect when you apply for that grant. Because like I said, you can go, I'm going to apply for $100,000. But then when you if you actually went and looked at that organization, they go, well, we only hand out $5,000 here. Maybe the max is $10,000. So the thing is, you have to understand what you're asking for before you're doing that. And I think the research does that. And then the binder, like I said, then you start to do those, answer the questions, the binder does that for you. But what the binder also has for you at the same time, and it's always, she gives us into it a Word document that we can save as a PDF. But you can modify that binder if somebody comes to you and says, I want to invest in you. I want to see what you're like. You can take that entire proposal binder, massage it a little bit for them, hand it to them, and it's ready to go without even because then sometimes people, they don't even have forms. Isn't that right, Cheryl? There's some places are not even, they're asking you for your proposal.
That's right.
binder.
Yeah.
You have that already in hand to be able to massage a little bit before you hand that over to them.
Yeah.
So it's already built for you.
Would you say that the application for the HFFI grant, that's the Healthy Food Financing Initiative grant, for those of us who might not know that acronym, would you say that application process was easier, David, because you had the binder?
Yes, absolutely. Because Paula was, I know Paula was the main lead on that. I truly appreciate Paula she's very passionate about the food co-op, and she works very diligent on it. And I think that with her help, my help and one of our owners, we were able to look through that and be able to drop answer those questions with the binder.
Pretty awesome. Pretty
Well,
awesome. And
I
I'm sure
wanted
that's the intent, Cheryl, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I did want to ask before we start asking questions. I did want to say you had when you were doing your presentation, Cheryl, you had used the word SMART goals.
Yeah.
If can you just take a moment to explain to the people what SMART goals are?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So when you are completing applications, funders really want to know what your plan is for the year. And those SMART goals, SMART is the acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. Funders may not always ask you to submit SMART goals, but they always want you to submit SMART goals. And so they might ask, what is your plan? What are your objectives? What are your chief aims? But at the end of the day, they're looking for you to understand exactly what you're able or capable of doing within the program year, and the goals that you submit to them, those goals become your deliverables. So meaning this is what you're promising to deliver if funded. And so it's really important that you have these SMART goals so that you can then share with the funder how you know you're on track for success for that program year. These goals come from your program description. They should never just come out of the air. So they come from everything you've already shared with the funder that you're doing from day to day. From that work, you develop goals, and from the goals, you develop your budget. So everything is tied in. So you don't have random pieces of your proposal that where there's no continuity. Everything should flow so that it makes sense to the reader. You want to help them to fund you. But that's what a SMART goal is. It's a very brief statement, usually around 20 words, one sentence, where you share with the funder in a very specific way that's measurable and time-based what you plan to do in the program year. And normally you're going to have between 3 and 5 of those SMART goals for your program.
Awesome. And, Dodie, thank you very much for the SMART goal in the chat for throwing that up there for us.
Oh, okay.
She put a little graphic in there about SMART goals.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which is helpful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Yeah, so we'll open it up to questions now. I'm sure all of you have lots of great questions. So feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask away. Cheryl, I don't know about you, but when I'm training folks on how to ask for money, we're talking about loans and shares of investments in their co-op. I teach them that one of the things that you have to do, you have to be comfortable with, is silence. When you ask someone a question, you have to be comfortable with silence. So let them talk away. And I see a couple of people unmuting. So here we go.
Good deal.
All right, everyone, I'll help you get over that one. David, Cheryl, thanks so much for sharing. We're at a place in the evolution of our co-op where this is very relevant and very timely. David, I'm curious, how have you set your expectations for what kind of grant funding you can get and how you think about that in your capital stack? And is that playing out as you've thought, or what's been different about that?
Because this is a very recent binder. We've only had a few months, so it hasn't been we've used it very long. However, what our plan, because we're a for-profit, it's kind of different. We do have a fiscal sponsor, of course, so we can always go through them if that's a requirement for the grant. But there are other types of grants out there that are not dependent on your status as whether a nonprofit or for-profit. Corporations love to give out money, and so if you can find corporations that align with a goal that you're wanting to do, say like volunteer programs, there's a lot of corporations that love to do volunteer type grants. So don't just look for nonprofits or things like that, but look at those corporate sponsor grants. And matter of fact, Cheryl, actually, I will do this. I will share a spreadsheet with all of you. I will give it to Katie so she can spread, but I've databases that are out there that I think, Cheryl, you've made that database up or that spreadsheet up as well. But there's organizations different databases that we use to search for, and some of them are corporations, some of them are educational, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So always look through all that process. But our goals is to fund things like outreach, marketing, volunteerism, things like that. The stuff that we're trying to right now do our trying to bring our get more to the public and things like that.
And
So
Dave, for some context, how many owners do you have at the co-op?
560.
Right.
So
okay.
we're really working toward our next big goal of 800. So that's our magic number, that when we get to 800, things start really happening fast. So right now, most of our focus is on outreach. So everything that our goals, that our grants are looking for, is to support that process, and also with the HFFI, one of the things that we were looking for was somebody to be funding for an actual paid position, to be more like a office manager or something like that, to kind of take the workload off of the working board. Because right now it is a struggle. If everybody knows, if you're on a working board, you're always got you don't have enough time to do all the work. Hopefully that answered Tim, hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, David, thank you. That was really helpful. I'm curious though, how are you thinking about grants as they fit into your capital stack? And how do you set those realistic expectations?
We haven't gotten that far.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Henny just mentioned in the chat that they asked for the same thing in their grant, Dave. So HFFI is getting this request a lot, I bet you.
Yeah, and it's if you got your, hopefully we're all doing a great job of explaining what we're trying to do with that. But I understand that federal grants are sometimes very difficult.
Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah, I have one actually. Thanks a lot, Dave and Cheryl. That was awesome. I was just curious though, on the capital stack end of it, I guess, are they looking in any of these grants for you to provide like financial projections at all for the future?
I mean, for the HFFI, I can't. I'll be honest with you. You're asking a question that I'm not really. You're using a phrase that I personally, because I'm still fairly new on the board, that I'm not understanding what you're talking about when you guys are doing those kind of things.
So like, I'm thinking more along the lines of, I guess, pro forma or financials from a pro forma. Do they ever require that kind of information?
Go ahead, Cheryl.
So I'll say that in general, with nonprofit, yes, funders are always wanting to know about your fiscal responsibility. And so while the budget itself is an amazing tool because it's your financial plan, it's not what happened. And so you're going to have funders that are going to ask you for your financial statement. So whether that is going to be, sometimes they'll pick and choose. Usually the usual suspects are going to be your income statement or your profit and loss. They love to see your balance sheet, to see, what you've been up to, what you're worth. And every so often they'll ask for those cash flows. So they want to see your financial statement, and it doesn't really matter how much you've brought in. So a lot of nonprofits that I work with, they tend to be small, micro nonprofits across our country, and they get very concerned when they're asked for their financials because they haven't brought in enough revenue to, in their opinion, to make it relevant. But it always is relevant because funders, they don't care if you bring in $100, right? They want to know, where did that revenue come from and how did you expend it? And so, yes, financials are an important part of funding. And when you are under, say, $5,000, $10,000 in your request, you might not have that obligation. But once you start getting into asking for monies that's over 20, 25,000 and above, you almost certainly will be asked for your financial statements.
Okay, that helps. Also, are they ever looking for you to predict your, like have a 10-year plan or something like that?
On the grant side, very rarely are you going to be asked to submit your strategic plan. Have I seen it? Yes, but it's rare. So it's not, I don't want to normalize that, meaning that it's something that happens all the time, because it isn't, not on the nonprofit, funding side.
Okay. And you also had referred to program year. I was just wanting to make sure I understood that. Is a program year the year of that the co-op is utilizing ahead, or is that the grant year?
Yeah. So when we are looking at non-governmental funding, the program year always refers to your program year. When you're looking at government funding, they always refer to their program year. So it really just depends on your funder.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And for brief clarification, Henny's got a question. He'll go next. They'll go next. The program is what you're trying to have funded, right, Cheryl?
Right.
What you're
right.
asking for. Okay.
Exactly. And
Yep.
usually that program year is your fiscal year, right? So it's not usually the calendar year unless your calendar year is the fiscal
Is the
year.
fiscal year.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Okay, Henny.
It's not a question, but more so clarifying about financial production. I'm like waist deep in grants for food co-op stuff right now. But from at least on the federal granting side and some grants that make themselves more federal-like, I'm seeing that there's like planning grants and then like implementation grants, and the planning grants have not been requesting pro formas because the idea is those grants
Right.
are funding for you to make a pro forma. And then in terms of implementation grant, I think it depends on like what department it is of what their standards are for what financial documents you are providing. I think I have seen one that's just like asking if you have one, and it's not asking for a particular result, if that makes sense. But it probably is like look at that particular grant sort of thing.
And Henny, congratulations on getting your HFFI grant. So awesome.
Very good news. Very good news. What other questions do we have? Got about 5 minutes left.
You might have to, it's proven to moisturize dry skin all day. Yoga formula for face too.
Chris, how about you go ahead?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I just had a question. How long did it take, Dave, to get and Cheryl, and by the way, thank you very much for your presentations. How long did it take you to put together that binder? Because it seems like quite a bit of information pulled together.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
I was going to say it's typically 4 to 6 weeks, but we work with you. So if that means that you have an urgent matter and we need to get it done, sooner, we can usually do it within 3 to 4 weeks. But if there isn't something that's urgent and pressing, something that you've got to apply for like yesterday, then the normal timeline is about 4 to 6 weeks.
That 4 to 6 weeks of like full-time work by us? I mean, we're all volunteers.
Yeah. And so usually I am the heavy. So that means that in that 4 to 6 weeks, we're probably only going to meet maybe 3 times initially to do project development. We're going to meet to go over our draft, and we're going to then meet at the very end so that we can talk about what just happened. And I can give the tutorial for how you use the funding tool going forward. So no, it's 4 to 6 weeks for me, and mostly because I usually have a pipeline, and so
Right.
I'm fitting everything and everybody in so that I give you your proposal the attention that it needs.
What are you doing tomorrow?
Usually writing.
So, I mean,
Thank you.
yeah, so
You're welcome.
Yeah, Cheryl's going to ask you for information up front. So a lot of your heavy lifting is on the upfront end of providing her the information she needs. I think it probably took about a week for us to get the information, because she's going to give you some forms to fill out and things like that, and so and be able some questions to answer. And so the more information you can provide her, and then the easier it is for her. So.
Thank you.
Hey, just know, I don't know if everybody knows who Suncoast is out here in the San Diego area out in California, but they also have been very successful in doing grants as well. I know that they've done presentations at Up and Coming. So as part of our cooperative sharing, always reach out to Suncoast and ask them questions as well, because depending on for us, they'll give us the California side of the house of where it's at, but always find your co-ops that are doing well, especially, and go and find out what grants that they're applying for in your area, so that you know that those funders are looking at co-ops and your type of mission.
David, I'm so glad that you said that, because I need to add also SCORE. SCORE in California, they do an amazing job at providing mentorship, and their mentorship is always free for as long as you need it. And so while they won't actually write the funding proposal for you, I mentioned earlier that second set of eyes and just having another brain in the room, and they can provide that for you so that whatever it is that you're doing, you can have support in that activity. So SCORE, I would look at SCORE, put in your zip code, find a chapter that's closest to you, and start working with a mentor.
Great advice. Great advice. And Purple Carrot shared in the chat that they were awarded the HFFI grant too. So that's
Yay.
fantastic. Very good news. Very good news. Happy to have basically grant royalty in the room with us here. We probably have time for one more question if someone has another question. Oh, how do we contact Cheryl? Yes, that's the best question of all, Cheryl. How would you like folks to contact you?
Yeah, and so I'll put up my last screenshot and thinking you guys can see that. And so that's my information. I'm with Doolin Nonprofit Services, and that is our website, my email, and then my voicemail. And I'm transparent. I'm usually on trainings like this. So I will always get back to you, but usually you'll leave a voicemail for me and I can get back to you and just as soon as I can.
Cheryl, I usually send the recording out of
Oh,
the
perfect.
webinar to everyone who registered. So if you're okay with it, I'll include your contact information when I send that out.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it's been lovely to have you all here. A special thanks to Cheryl and to Dave. Thanks for sharing what's happened, what your process has been, how it's worked out for you. I think this general practice, whether you decide to use Cheryl or someone local, or you decide to do it yourself, but the practice of preparation so that you have this tool available to you when the right grant comes available, when you've done the research that Dave's talked so much about and you found the right fit, you have the tool to make that process easy. So many thanks to you all, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Nice seeing you, Dave.
That's-
Take care.
You.
See ya, everyone.